Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, Text 23. Shri Shuka Uvacha Jitasano Jita Shvaso Jitasango Jitendriyaha Stule Bhagavato Rupe Manaha Sandarayad Diya Shri Shuka Uvacha Jitasano Jitashvaso Jitasango Jitendriyaha Stule Bhagavato Rupe Manasandharayad Diyaha Diya Shri Shuka Uvacha Jitasano Jitashvaso Jitasango Jitendriya Stule Bhagavato Rupe Manasandharayaddiya Shri Shuka Uvacha Jitasano Jitashvaso Jitasango Jitendriyaha Stule Bhagavato Rupe Manasandharayaddiya
Shri Shuka Uvacha
Shri Shuka Uvacha
Jitasango Jitasvaso
Jitasano Jitashvaso
Jitasango Jitendriyaha
Jitasango Jitendriyaha
Stule Bhagavato Rupe
Stule Bhagavato Rupe
Manasandharayaddiya
Manasandharayaddiya Shri Shuka Uvacha
Jitasano Jitashvaso Jitasango Jitendriyaha Stule Bhagavato Rupe
Stule Bhagavato Rupe
Manasandharaye Dhiya.
Manasandharayadhiya. Shri Shuka Uvacha. Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Jitasano jita shwaso
Tasano jita svaso.
jita sango jitindriyaha
Jita sango jitendriyaha.
stule bhagavato rupe
Stule Bhagavato Rupe
manasandharayetya.
Manasandharayadhiya.
Shri Shuka Uvacha
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Jitasana Jita Shvaso
Jita sango jita svaso.
Jita Sango Jitendriyaha
Jita sango jitendriyaha.
Stule Bhagavato Rupe
Stule Bhagavato Rupe
Manasandharayadhya.
Manasandharayadhiya.
Shri Shuka Uvacha
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Jitasano Jita Shwaso
Jitasano jita shvaso.
Jita Sango Jitendriya
Jita sango jitendriyaha.
Stule Bhagavato Rupe
Stule Bhagavato Rupe
Manasandharayedya.
Manasandharayadhiya.
Shri Shuka Uvacha
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Jitasano Jita Shwaso
Tasano jita svaso.
Jita Sangha Jitendriya
Jita sango jitendriya.
Stule Bhagavato Rupe
Stule Bhagavato Rupe
Manasandharayedya.
Manasandharayadhiya.
Shri Shuka Uvacha
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Jitasano jita shvaso
Tasano jita svaso.
jita sango jitendriyaha
Jitendriyaha.
stule bhagavato rupe
Stule Bhagavato Rupe
manasandharayedya.
Dharayadhiya. Is there anyone online? Shri Shuka Uvacha. Shukadev Goswami said, Jitta asanaha, controlled sitting posture. Jitta Jitta sangaha, controlled association. Jitta indriyaha, controlled senses. Stule, in the gross matter. Bhagavata, unto the personality of Godhead. Rupe, in the feature of. Manaha, the mind. Sandarayat, must apply. Diya, by intelligence. Translation. Shukadev Goswami answered, one should control the sitting posture, regulate the breathing process by the yogic pranayama, and thus control the mind and senses, and with intelligence apply the mind to the gross potencies of the Lord, called Virat Rupa. Report by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The materially absorbed mind of the conditioned soul does not allow him to transcend the limit of the bodily conception of life, and thus the yoga system for meditation, controlling the sitting posture and breathing process, and fixing the mind on the Supreme, is prescribed in order to mold the character of the gross materialist. Unless such materialists are able to cleanse the materially absorbed mind, it is impossible for them to concentrate upon thoughts of transcendence. And to do so, one may fix one's mind on the gross, material, or external feature of the Lord. The different parts of the gigantic form of the Lord are described in the following verses. The materialistic men are very anxious to have some mystic powers as a result of such a controlling process. But the real purpose of yogic regulations is to eradicate the accumulated dirty things like lust, anger, avarice, and all such material contaminations. If the mystic yogi is diverted by the accompanying feats of mystic control, then his mission of yogic success is a failure, because the ultimate aim is God realization. He is therefore recommended to fix his gross materialistic mind by a different conception and thus realize the potency of the Lord. As soon as the potencies are understood to be instrumental manifestations of the transcendence, one automatically advances to the next step, and gradually the stage of full realization becomes possible for him. Om Agyana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shukadeva Goswami answered, one should control the sitting posture, regulate the breathing process by the yogic pranayam, and thus control the mind and senses with intelligence. And with intelligence apply the mind to the gross potencies of the Lord called the Virat Rupa. Srila Prabhupada gives the example that sometimes people ask, can you show me God? Sometimes this question we meet. And he tells them that, yes, you can see God. I am also seeing God. And he gives the example that when one has some problem with their car, they go to a mechanic and they see there's a problem with, the person sees there's a problem with his car. The mechanic sees there's a problem with the car, but the mechanic, he just touches some part and then it runs. But the person who's owning the car and he sees the car, he's looking at it, but he can't get it to run. But someone who has the qualification, the mechanic, all he does, he touches one part and immediately it runs. So if the qualification has to be there just to see properly an automobile, then what to speak of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whom everything is coming from, who has an eternal spiritual form. Anyone can see God, but the qualification must be there. So I remember in that lecture, Prabhupada was saying we can't see God with, people want to say, I'm God, you're God, or imagine their own form of God. And so he was saying they can't see God with their nuisance qualification. Just with all these misconceptions, we're not able to see God. With all these dirty things accumulated in the heart, lust, anger, avarice, and so on, the heart needs to be purified. And then we'll have the proper qualification to see the Lord. So someone who has this materialistic conception of life and all these dirty things in the heart, they can begin to see the Lord and purify their heart by seeing him in his manifestation. They can see the universal form of the Lord. Just like someone can see the whole ocean and think, oh, this is a very beautiful ocean. But then they can wonder, well, who is the person who made this ocean? Where is all of this water coming from? Where's all this sand coming from? Who made the sky? So like this, they can see that all of this is actually belonging to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they can see him in his different aspects of the creation. They can see that all the trees are like the hairs on the form of the Lord. The sun is like his eye. The moon is like his other eye. So like this, they can see God in his manifestation and become qualified to then see the personality of Godhead. One thing that stood out in the verse is that we see here the yogi should have controlled sitting posture, controlled breathing process, controlled senses, and one of the words is jitta sangaha, controlled association. So it's not that the yogic process can be practiced, this pranayam, this meditation and controlling the breathing that many people want to do. It's not that that can just be practiced as some fashion, going to some yoga studio in the middle of some busy city and expect to gain some spiritual insight, because they're not following the proper steps to do it. We see here part of it is proper association. So the way that one can have proper association is by being around those who are engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. And then they have a pure association, because everyone is focused on serving Krishna. And then it's easier for anyone who wants to achieve the goal of life, pure devotional service to Krishna. It's easier for them to achieve that because they're around people who are doing that. Krishna has a personal form. It's not just that he is just the universe, or just someone might first see this universal form. So they're seeing the lower planetary systems are like his feet. They can see all these different things. The oceans are like the waist of the Lord, or the navel of the Lord. The mountains are like his bones, the different bones that kind of come up off of the body. They can see all these things, but it's not just that the Lord is only manifested in his potency of the universe, but he's simultaneously one with his potency and different. He also has his own, he's the original person. So people often say man is made in the image of God. So we look similar to him. He has his own spiritual form, full of eternal bliss and knowledge. It's not a temporary material form. And so to understand that supreme person, one has to serve him. Tesham satatayuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhiyogam tam yenamam upayantite. As they worship me with love and devotion, I reveal the path by which they can come to me. So when we give our love and our devotion to Krishna, our attention, our time, our service, then he reveals himself. Because he's a person, so he has his likes and his dislikes, and he also feels indebted to his devotees, so he's not just going to give himself to somebody cheaply. But just like if we want to see the President of the United States, we would have to do so many things, schedule a meeting, speak first with the secretary, and then they'll say, okay, I'll bring you to his office. So many things. It's not just that we barge into the White House to see such a important person. So that's just one person in charge of one country on one planet in one universe. But what to speak of the person who is easily in charge of all of the universes, material and spiritual. And so the proper qualification for seeing God in his personal form is, he explains in the Bhagavad Gita, always think of me, become my we engage in Krishna's service, and then he shows us how to come to him. He reveals himself more and more to the devotee. As they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly, he says in the Bhagavad Gita. So by serving Krishna, in different processes, hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet, worshiping the deity in the temple, so many different things, we're remembering our eternal relationship with Krishna. And he, through his own will, is revealing himself more to the devotee, and the devotee is gaining this realization of the Lord and detachment from the material world, or from the material concept of life, the idea of using this material world for our sense gratification rather than for the service of the Lord. And that qualification also is explained again in the Bhagavad Gita when Krishna says to Arjuna that I'm explaining this most supreme science of devotional service to you because you are my friend and devotee. So by always serving the Lord and thinking of the Lord, in this way we can become his friend, we can see him face to face, we can become his devotee, and in this way he'll reveal himself to us. And that's what everyone is hankering after, that eternal relationship with Krishna. But people are trying to satisfy that hankering in so many perverted ways, because in the material world, the mind and the heart and this whole material covering has become contaminated by so many different things, influences, desires, and whatnot. So the living entity just doesn't know the right way to go about achieving their happiness. But that happiness can be achieved when one redirects their love or their attention and their service to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, instead of to material things, trying to enjoy the senses. When someone wants to serve God instead of trying to serve dog, then they'll actually be fully happy. So those are some points. Are there any comments or questions? Yes, Maharaj?
Bible says man is created in the image of God. So we would think then that God would have a form. It seems logical then he would have a form that resembles our form. And so Krishna does have 2 hands, 2 legs, etc. Same idea, same form, but Nitya Navayovana, eternally youthful and not subjected to old age and disease and death. Some differences. And as you mentioned, we would advise the beginner who is having difficulty with God's having a form, a human-like form, and they can begin their meditation on these aspects of the universe. And it's helpful because instead of having so many unanswered questions like where does everything come from, what's the cause of everything, the original source, that's all answered with this transcendental knowledge, that everything comes from that same Supreme Being who can take a form that's gigantic, and he can simultaneously enter into the atom, andantarasta paramanu chantarastam. He can enter into every atom, into the heart of every living entity. Not only can he does it, and at the same time, he's the whole universal cosmic manifestation. He's entered into every localized form as a super soul, and still he has his own planet in the spiritual world, aloof from the material world, where he's eternally enjoying his pastimes. So this provides answers for all the unknown questions that the mind can come up with. But one has to become submissive and humble so that he can be a good receptacle for the mercy of the Lord, and the knowledge that's given in the Vedas. Otherwise, he can go on speculating. It says that the yogis, they can meditate and try to go at the speed of mind, and still they can't approach the lotus feet of the Lord after millions of years, because it's not a material thing. It's not a material distance. One has to get the blessings of the Lord, get a little mercy from the Lord. With a little mercy, then one can understand and realize God by His grace, not by our own endeavor. The example is given of the monkey, baby monkey, holding onto the stomach or back of the mother monkey as she jumps around from the branch to branch. There's a good chance the baby will fall down because its arms are not very strong. But if the mother cat takes the kitten in her mouth, then the kitten is safer. She doesn't have to be concerned about falling down. The mother's taking care. So that's the process of devotional service, that one takes shelter of the Lord, and He personally takes care to make sure the devotee is safely able to progress in devotional service.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Doing our duty equates immediately to loving service, or like, I guess this is, I don't necessarily know how to ask the question, but is doing our duty...
That's a good way to ask it.
Okay.
Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, if you can't always fix your mind on me, then just follow the regulative principles of devotional service. And like this, you'll steadily make advancement towards purely loving Krishna. Sorry, I used my own wording, but that's how he explains it. Just follow the regulative principles of pure devotional service. So, yeah, he's giving like kind of like a ladder in the Bhagavad Gita. There's a nice section where he's saying the first thing is just to love me, Krishna. But if you can't do that, do this. If you can't do that, do this. So by following the regulative principles of pure devotional service, we're doing our duty in devotional service, following it as it's described in Shastra. There's a nice verse that explains devotional service that's contrary to the Shastra, or against the principles that are described. It's not service, it's just a disturbance in society. So not that way, but as it's given in the scripture, like you said, we're doing our duty, engaging in devotional service, and then we'll develop that love of Godhead, of Krishna.
So we don't have to necessarily like or be maybe attached to a duty given by authority, especially if they can change. Like, say someone doesn't like to just do a service, but they do it because it's their duty, because eventually that leads them to a pure devotional service.
Yeah, that's good. I remember another part of the Bhagavad Gita where it's described that we're doing to do our duty, but being unattached to the result of it. And so it's not, even if we don't like it, we do the duty because we're trying to serve Krishna. We're trying to serve Krishna's devotees, and Krishna sees that sincere effort of the devotee, and then we can make advancement steadily. Having some attachment for a service is also good, because then we're more fired up to do it. But either way, even if we don't want to do it, or we're not feeling well, or we really want to do it, or whatever, we do that service. And especially for a brahmachari, they're eager to just do any service that they're given in the temple. That's more or less their duty at the ashram that they're staying at. They just do whatever duty they're given, whether it's washing a pot or distributing a book or giving some class or any duty, not just I'll pick and I'm only going to do that one. And then the other one, I'll do it really bad so that I don't have to do it again or something. Not like that. And they're happy to do whatever duty. Yes, Bhakti Gio.
What was that verse that is the qualification for seeing God in the Bhagavad Gita? You said something like always engaging in devotional service.
I'm going to ask Magadari, is it Bahunam, the one who always think of me, become my devotee? Bahunam Janmanam Ante. Is that it, or is that not it?
Manmana Bhava Madbhakto.
That's what it starts with. Manmana Bhava Madbhakto Mad Yajimam Namaskuru Mam Vaishyasi Satyam. Did I just put two together? I might have done that. But it starts with Manmana Bhava Madbhakto.
What chapter and verse do you know?
I don't know. What is it? 934. Are there any other comments or questions? Yes, Magadari?
May I share a comment, Prabhu?
Mm-hmm.
On Bhakta Fred's question, one time Prabhupada was asked about this love and practicing stage. And Prabhupada was describing that you see these boys and girls, they're dancing for the deity. That is love, because we're doing some austerity, we're doing some effort and attention, and it's on its way that way. So everything that we do, which is authorized, is a symptom of a small bit of real affection for Krishna. But we know that, as you mentioned at the beginning, association was the key to bringing that out. So when we associate with Prabhupada and the devotees, they really do love Krishna. They care about God. So then we do what they do, and that's a symptom of our little shadow attachment or shadow affection for Krishna.
Right. One of the things, the qualifications for understanding the Lord or getting the mercy of the Lord that stood out to me from what Maharaj was saying is that we have to be submissive and humble, because we're more or less begging for the mercy of the Lord. Maharaj was saying it's not by our own endeavor. So these are two important points in devotional service, is being humble and submissive, and then we can get the mercy of the devotees and the mercy of the Lord. There's a nice analogy that a tree with no fruits, it's standing very tall, but then the one that actually has fruits, it's like bending down to, give the fruits and everything. So, like that, we're not trying to put ourselves above others, but actually taking a humble position, and then we'll get the real fruit of devotional service. Trying to remember if there's any pastimes or something that relate to that, because they're important points. Yes.
So if I accept Krishna as my Lord and Savior, then that's it? I don't have to do anything else?
No.
Just be humble and sincere, and that's it?
Yeah, we do the effort that we're making is to follow the instructions of the Lord. So some people have this misconception that, yeah, if I just accept some form of God, I just accept it. I say, I accept the so-and-so, then I'm saved. But it's actually a misconception, because if they really accepted a representative of the Lord or God himself, then they would follow his instructions. Like people say, I just accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And so then we can ask them, wonderful, do you follow what he says to do, his instructions, like the 10 Commandments? And then more often than not, they don't have any sufficient answer for following those things. So that's not actually accepting, but accepting would mean you accept what the person says, and that we actually carry it out. Is that okay? Are there any other comments or questions? Let's see. Yes, Magadari Prabhu?
When we meet persons who are not completely comfortable with God being a person, or sometimes we don't understand what the word person means. Like, we think person means like just a human. Like, my dog's not a person, but my neighbor is a person. So when we hear that God's a person, we don't like that idea, because every person that we met is off. So my question is, should we explain that, when we meet persons on the street or that are a little bit interested in Krishna consciousness, should we explain to them these things, that, the sun is God's eye, and have them observe nature? Should we preach to them like that, to see the beauty in nature, and then tie it back that it's all coming from God?
Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj.
We do that. We can speak on the philosophy of it, of how everything can be seen as God, or everything can be seen as the supreme in nature. That's a beginning. And then we have the chanting. And many people who do chant hold the impersonal idea. That's become popular now, that many people are chanting and still they're impersonalists. But they'll be benefited like that by the mantra, by the sound vibration. So if we present it like that, this is a transcendental sound vibration, that's true. We're not withholding the medicine. We're giving, the medicine's there. It is a transcendental sound vibration. And if they want to go further in understanding what is the potency in that sound, what makes it different, then they can gradually be able to understand that this is because it's connected to the Supreme Being who has all potencies, so gradually they can become more, and by chanting Krishna's name, one becomes attached to Krishna. One becomes attached to his name, and his name is not different than himself. So if in any way, either through the philosophy or through meditation, even so-called impersonal meditation, if they follow the system given in the Bhagavatam, seeing as the feet of the Supreme, and then they make advancement. If one becomes attached to any aspect of Krishna, his name, his fame, his pastimes, his entourage, his character, his devotees, his prasadam. So just by prasadam taking, they can become attached to the personality of Godhead, because there's no difference.
So it's the natural position of every living entity to render service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that's can be easily awakened by any contact with devotional service. And thank you all for listening to Srimad Bhagavatam class. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.